Hey guys, tonight we're floating gently across a lake that no longer exists. You're drifting, half asleep already, in a tiny wooden canoe. The air is cool. Mist slides over the surface like sheer fabric, swirling around low willow branches, and softening the outlines of everything. You hear nothing but the rhythmic drip of water falling from your paddle, and a few sleepy birds muttering in the reeds. The lake is still dark, but not for long. A hint of lavender creeps into the horizon behind you. Dawn is stretching, yawning, blinking. You probably won't survive this world. Honestly, it's the 1400s. Your empire is super into human sacrifice, and you're about to spend your day knee-deep in lake mud. But how you've got a canoe, a strong back, and a patch of floating farmland to call your own. Could be worse, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is. Always curious who's drifting off where in the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're not in Tenochtitlan yet, not quite. You're somewhere south of the great island city, just off the shores of Lake Texcoco, one of 5 lakes that once spread across the Valley of Mexico like watery fingers. The sun still hasn't risen, but the floating farms that already waking up. They never really sleep. They just exhale slower at night. You trail your fingers in the water. It's warmer than you expected, silty, full of microscopic life. Somewhere nearby, a duck splashes, one of the dozens that have adopted the gardens as their personal buffet. You'll be glad for that later. Ducks mean fewer pests nibbling at your squash. From this angle, the Chinampas look like long, narrow rectangles just barely peeking above the water. Some are already green with new maize stalks. Others lie muddy and bare, waiting for planting. Still others are bursting with marigolds, their orange blossoms glowing like little lanterns even in this early light. You paddle quietly past a sleeping canoe. The farmer who owns it is probably still snoring under a woolen cloak on the shore. Or maybe he's crouched in the reeds somewhere, watching you. Hard to say. People who work the Chinampas know how to move without being seen. And the gardens are everywhere. There are thousands of them stretching in neat, deliberate grids across the shallows, separated by narrow canals just wide enough for a single canoe. It's a floating patchwork quilt. If the quilt could feed a city. Historians still argue whether the term floating gardens is even accurate. The Chinampas don't float, technically, not like rafts. They're more like semi-artificial islands, built up from the lakebed, anchored with trees, and kept in place by mud, patience, and repetition. But floating sounds more magical, and in the cool stillness of morning, it's easy to believe. In magic, a breeze nudges your canoe. Somewhere nearby, a heron lifts off with a lazy flap. It circles overhead once, then vanishes into the mist. You smell wet grass, crushed reeds, damp soil, a faint, earthy sweetness. You steer your canoe toward the edge of one particular It's yours, at least for tonight. The mud here is rich and black, soft enough to dig with your hands. You tie your boat to a crooked willow post and climb out barefoot. The cold sucks at your toes for a second before you sink ankle deep. You wiggle your feet. Not unpleasant. Just grounding. A few stalks of maize remain from last season. Their leaves rustle like whispers. You'll pull them later, toss them onto a compost pile, maybe save a few for torch fuel. For now, you kneel and breathe. You feel the work waiting beneath the surface, the memory of hands, generations deep, shaping these beds from nothing but silt and reeds. Some say the first Chinampas go back to the earlier peoples of the Valley Xochimilca, Chalca, even the Toltecs before them. The Aztecs just perfected it. You run your hand over the soil. It's warm now, warmed from within. The lake is shallow. Here, maybe a meter, maybe less. But what lies beneath is more important than what lies above. Decay, compost, mulch, the quiet industry of worms, and above you, a sky just starting to blush pink. The first real sound of the morning comes from across the canal. A paddle, soft and steady. Another farmer gliding past, his canoe low with baskets. He nods once as he passes. No words, just shared understanding, shared mud. It's going to be a good day. The lake told you so. It might seem odd, at first glance. You're in the middle of a shallow lake, ankle deep in squish, surrounded by a perfectly fertile rectangle of earth you just helped build. But if there's land all around, why here? Why bother coaxing vegetables from floating mud when the ground is just a paddle away? Well, because the Valley of Mexico, didn't exactly overflow with farmland. The Aztecs inherited a landscape of extremes, towering mountains, cratered volcanoes, dry hills, and salty water. The good farmland was sparse, and what little there was had already been claimed by other city-states before the Aztecs even showed up. When the Mexica people first arrived in the valley in the 1200s, they were pushed out to the watery edge, what others saw as unusable marsh. But they didn't see a swamp. They saw potential. The lake was shallow, perfectly suited to manipulation. The mud at the bottom, nutrient-rich, constantly refreshed, and soft enough to shape. No back-breaking tilling. No long dry spells. Just slow, steady productivity. By the 1400s, they had perfected the system. You glance down at the canal water lapping against your Chinampas edge. It's clear today, tinged slightly brown from the roots below. That's your irrigation system. It flows around each floating plot like a watery highway. Plants here don't wilt. They're fed from below, watered not by rain but by the regular pulse of lake tides. You kneel and push your hand into the soft edge. The soil crumbles, loose and black. It's never compacted here. It breathes. Every season, you add new lake mud to keep it fertile. The soil never grows tired. No crop rotation needed. It just keeps giving. And when the rains come too hard, when fields on land would flood or erode, simply absorbs. The water seeps in, then slides back out. The Chinampas float just enough to be flexible. A buffer between chaos and calm. That's the beauty of it. Even the design itself is smart. The long, narrow shape of the Chinampas lets you reach every row of crops without trampling anything. You paddle down the canals and lean out to harvest, never stepping onto the beds. No compaction. No need for plows. Just hands, tools, and time. And let's not forget the willows. Every few meters, along the edge of each plot, you planted a hotstall, thin trees that grow fast and love water. Their roots reach down and anchor the beds, keeping them from drifting. Their branches shade. You're amazed during the hottest days. And their leaves. Well, sometimes you feed those to the ducks, or just sit beneath them when the sun gets too bold. It's quiet work, repetitive, meditative. But this system, it sustained Tenochtitlan, one of the largest cities in the world at the time. Over 200,000 people fed by gardens no wider than alleyways, stitched together by canoe. You wipe your hands on your tunic. There's dirt beneath your nails, and that's a good sign. The squash are blooming. The beans are climbing. The maize stalks are shoulder high now, and you swear they creak when the wind pushes through. You sit back in your canoe for a moment and drift all around you. Other Chinampas lie in tidy rows, stitched together like a green quilt, held in place by tree roots and memory. You think of the hands that shaped them, the calluses, the laughter, the stories told across the canals. And in that moment, as the breeze ruffles the lake and a dragonfly lands on your paddle, you realize something. This isn't just gardening. It's architecture. It's strategy. It's survival. And above all, it's quiet mastery of the natural world. The lake isn't hurried, and neither are you. You're standing at the edge of the shallow water now, barefoot, your toes just brushing the mud. It's soft and cool earth that has been underwater for centuries, full of nutrients and secrets. Around you, piles of reeds are stacked like sleeping animals, still damp from yesterday's harvest. These are your building blocks. Constructing a Chinampa is more ritual than chore. First, you and a few others gather long bundles of junco reeds, flexible and strong. You weave them into a mat, wide and thick, something that can float for now, but settle with time. This mat is your foundation. Not stone, not timber, just reeds and trust. Next comes the mud, lots of it. You wade in with a wide, flat basket and scoop the dark sludge from the lake bed. It smells faintly of rain and old leaves. Heavy, wet, and oddly satisfying to lift. You sling it onto the reed mat, spreading it out like frosting over cake. Layer after layer. Reeds, mud, reeds again, more mud, until it begins to rise out of the water like a sleeping loaf of bread. Then come the wooden stakes, thick poles driven into the lake bed, around the perimeter of the new island. These hold everything in place, like a loose fence. Willow branches are planted too, because their roots love the water, and over time they'll anchor the Chinampa for good. These aren't just trees, they're future guardians. You check the edges. Everything must be even, straight, but not too rigid. There's a beauty in the curves of nature, and the Aztecs understood that. You can't rush a Chinampa. It will grow when it's ready. Eventually, grasses take root. Tiny plants poke their heads up from the muck. A dragonfly hovers close by, inspecting your progress like a tiny inspector general in shimmering armor. You pause to admire it. It's always good luck when they visit. By now, the mat has sunk a little heavier with all that mud, but it still floats. Eventually, it will settle and stay, becoming part of the lake itself. Half eland, half dash dream. You pat the surface one more time, smoothing it with the back of your hand. It's not just a platform. It's the beginning of something that will outlive you. Historians still argue whether these Chinampas should be considered floating farms at all. After all, they don't actually float in the modern sense. They rest on lake beds, half supported by sediment, half anchored by willows. But semantics hardly matter when you're standing on one, planting seeds. Because now it's time for the Earth's other half, the sky. You sprinkle maize into shallow furrows, your fingers caked in cooling soil. Each seed gets tucked in like a secret. Beans follow, then squash. The three sisters, as later civilizations would call them. Somewhere a heron flaps lazily by. The breeze tugs at your tunic. A few more strokes with your paddle, and your canoe nudges alongside your new garden. You look at it, quiet and proud. It's not much, just mud and reeds. But it will feed dozens, and when the rains come, when the sun rises, when the roots dig in, and the leaves unfold, you'll return with your basket to gather the things that grew here on a platform, built by your hands, floating just above the sleep of the lake. The Chinampa isn't finished until it's anchored. Floating land is clever, sure, but if it drifts off every time the wind shifts, you've basically built a fancy raft for your vegetables. And let's face it, floating lettuce isn't going to feed an empire. That's where the trees come in. The first time you stake a Chinampa, it's like planting bones into soft earth. Tall, skinny, and fast-growing oats, the native willow trees of the valley, are perfect for the job. You take saplings just a little taller than yourself and drive them deep into each corner of the Chinampa. Then you add more along the long sides, like sewing pins along fabric. And those roots, they don't waste time. They dive straight down through mud, mats, and lakebed muck until they grip something solid. Eventually, the entire island becomes lashed to the lake bottom by a curtain of living roots. You run your fingers along the trunk of one willow alder now, sturdy and smooth. It's been here for years. You were barely tall enough to tie a reed rope when this one was planted, and now it shades your whole Chinampa by mid-morning. The canopy above gently rustles in the breeze. It's one of those barely there sounds, like the pages of a book turning somewhere far away. A boat glides by in the next canal, no shouting, no oars slapping, just a push-pole, a ripple, and a sigh. The willow trees aren't just practical, they're beautiful. They mark the edges of each garden like soft borders, giving shape to the floating maze of green. If you climbed a hill outside the city and looked down over Lake Xochimilco, the Chinampas would appear like neat rows of velvet, stitched together with the gray lines of trees. You wouldn't know where land ends and water begins. It's not just the trees that hold it all together either. Sometimes you drive wooden stakes through the corners and lash them with vines or rawhide cords. Sometimes, in older Chinampas, you'll see big chunks of volcanic stone pressed into the base like anchors. But mostly, it's the roots, the quiet workhorses of the system, that do the heavy lifting. As years go by, these anchored gardens become stable, permanent. The soil thickens, the trees grow fat, birds begin to nest in the branches, lizards stretch out on the warmed bark, and the garden stops feeling like it floats. You can walk across it now, barefoot, and not feel a single shift, just the dry crumb of soil underfoot, broken only by green stalks and trailing bean vines. There's a little superstition to always is. When you mix plants and people, some farmers whisper that the awo trees carry water spirits in their roots, that they protect the Chinampas from collapse or rot. Others leave offerings at their base, bits of maize or flowers from last season's harvest, just in case you don't ask too many questions. After all, the trees haven't failed you yet. As the sun climbs higher, the shade they give is more than welcome. You duck beneath one now, wiping sweat from your brow with the corner of your tunic. The soil is warm, the leaves are whispering, and a dragonfly skips past your face like it has somewhere more important to be. And still, everything holds steady. You smile, knowing the land won't drift tonight, or tomorrow, or for years. This Chinampa is tethered, rooted, grounded, even if you aren't. You're walking the narrow edge of a Chinampa now, balance practiced, feet bare. On either side, water, not deep, not threatening, just cool, dark, and rippling. It doesn't smell like the sea or a river. It smells like clay, old roots, and yesterday's rain. These aren't random pools, they're canals. Dug deliberately, measured, planned, and cleaned with patient care. Between each Chinampa runs a watery path just wide enough for a canoe to pass. Sometimes two if the boatman don't mind brushing shoulders. These canals are the quiet arteries of Aztec life, moving food, people, and tools in the softest, smoothest way imaginable. You don't walk to your neighbor's farm, you paddle. There's no traffic, no hooves clattering, no carts screeching, just pole-pushed canoes sliding along the still surface, the holes sighing as they part the algae like curtain folds. It's faster than walking, easier than hauling, and a whole lot more peaceful than trying to push a wheelbarrow across damp soil. This whole water highway network keeps everything humming. In Tenochtitlan, the grand capital, you could travel by water nearly everywhere. Entire sections of the city sat on artificial islands, with canals cut between them like calm alleyways. Families floated to market. Priests glided to temples. Fishermen passed quietly at dawn, casting their nets while drifting past reed walls. Out here on the Chinampas, though, things move even slower. Your neighbor floats by. Now he's got a woven basket full of marigold petals, probably for a shrine. He raises a hand, nods once, doesn't speak. You return the gesture. The water between you carries only the faint dip of his paddle and the soft slap of his boat's nose, tapping against the side of his Chinampa. No horns, no yelling, just a gliding kind of silence. The canals need maintenance, of course. They silt up. They clog with weeds. Every few seasons, you take time to dredge them, dragging up black muck from the bottom and hauling it onto the garden beds. It's heavy work, but rewarding. That muck is rich with nutrients, and the plants love it like candy. Kids sometimes help, paddling alongside with smaller baskets. They wear more mud than they carry, but the laughter echoes across the water like it belongs there. No one hurries. The sun will rise whether the canal is clean today or next week. Even the layout is clever. The canals are arranged in a grid, not random or winding. They make the landscape feel like a floating chessboard. If you've got a good sense of direction and a bit of patience, you can find your way anywhere. It's said you could paddle all the way from the far shore to the heart of the city without ever touching land. You squat by the edge now, dipping a hand into the water. Cool, silky, the silt curls around your fingers like smoke in reverse. Fish dart away to new ones, like silver commas. Sometimes, the birds dive after them. Herons and egrets stand tall in the shallows, patient as old librarians. Even the ducks paddle here, snacking on pests and fertilizing as they float. Nature helps out without needing to be asked. You watch a canoe disappear around the bend, its wake barely lasting a moment. The canals aren't flashy, they don't roar or sparkle, but they work, and they've worked for centuries. While the rest of the world was inventing cobbled roads and noisy wagons, the Aztecs were floating. Quietly, gently, efficiently. And isn't that kind of wonderful? You walk back to your boat now, gently pushing off from the edge with your paddle. The Chinampas glide past like dreams. The trees lean over you like guardians. And the canal, your soft, silent road, welcomes you back. The paddle makes only the quietest plash as you steer back toward your Chinampa. The morning mist has lifted a little, and the sun slips through the willow branches in thin, golden fingers. It's time to get to work, but this isn't the kind of work that rushes you. You ease your canoe alongside the redraped edge and step off, balancing with a practiced wobble. The Chinampa is firm beneath your feet, surprisingly solid for something floating on a lake. That's the genius of it, really. It's alive, rooted, but built with a gardener's hand. And now, you'll need your tools. Not a tractor or a power tiller. Nothing that roars or growls or needs a key. You reach for a simple digging stick, long, polished, pointed. It's made from wood, smoothed by use, passed down maybe 2 or 3 generations. If it breaks, you carve another. You have a basket, too, woven tight from reeds. It smells like the lake, damp, earthy, and sun-dried all at once. It will carry everything today. Maybe chiles, maybe tomatoes, maybe the little amaranth plants you set out last week. You kneel by one row and push the digging stick into the soil. It slides in easily. This mud is soft, thick, and nourishing, like it's been waiting centuries just to hold another seed. And it has, sort of. Chinampa soil is reused again and again, fed by dredged canal muck and fallen leaves and natural compost. Some say the soil never dies, just naps between seasons. And as you work slow, steady, quiet, you realize how smart This whole setup is the canals surrounding the garden keep everything moist. The plants never go thirsty, even when the sky forgets to rain. Water seeps in from below, drawn up into the roots like a slow sip from a straw. You don't need hoses, or sprinklers, or prayer. Sometimes you scoop lake water into a clay bowl and sprinkle it over the tenderest sprouts, just because it feels good. But truth be told, these plants could almost grow themselves. You move slowly along the row, flicking weeds into your basket, patting the soil down around the new shoots. You hum a little, maybe something your grandmother taught you, maybe nothing at all. Now and then you pause to stretch, to look up. A white bird floats past, trailing its reflection behind like a second self. A dragonfly pauses midair, deciding whether your head looks like a suitable landing spot. It decides, no. Wise insect. Next comes the ladder-like, rake a forked branch, shaped to tug and scratch gently across the beds. It breaks up crusty dirt and lifts away old roots. It doesn't do the work for you, but it helps. Like a friend with good timing and no questions. You remember something now. A debate among modern scholars, one that makes you smile. Historians still argue whether Chinampas should be considered floating at all. Some say they were more like artificial islands, anchored and fixed. Others insist they moved slightly, with the seasons, shifting with the lake's rhythm. You can't decide. The truth feels somewhere in between. You lift your rake, stretch your back, and glance down the row. The plants are happy, standing tall, bright green against the brown-black earth. Corn leaves rustle like whispered secrets. Squash blossoms glow, golden near the ground. Beans curl and climb in lazy spirals, using nearby sticks as if to say, "Don't worry, I've got this." You grab your basket and move to the next patch. Same pace, same rhythm. This is what a gardener's day feels like. Not a race, not a grind, just a gentle, constant care. You take your time. You know the plants, you know the soil, and it knows you back. If you fall asleep among the rows for a few minutes, that's fine too. The birds will keep watch. The trees will wave you a breeze. And the Chinampa, it will hold you up, like always. Because this is your floating farm. Not grand, not flashy, but quietly brilliant. And tomorrow, it will greet you again.